Today is November the 13th, 2014. We're in the Epidemiology Conference Room in McGavin-Greenberg Hall in the UNC Gilling School of Global Public Health. And I'm Vic Schoenbach, and I have the great privilege and honor today to interview Bernice Otudeko, who is a 1966 graduate from the Department of Health Education, now called Department of Health Behavior, in the UNC Gilling School of Global Public Health. So, Bernice, thank you so much for coming to visit and giving us this time.
Thank you for inviting me to do this.
This is a great pleasure for me.
It's a great honor for me also to do this.
So, Ed Ellis, who was the second African American to receive a PhD from UNC, from the School of Public Health, was sitting in this very chair about 6 months ago.
Oh, wow.
When I interviewed him. And Bill Jenkins did also. You don't know Bill Jenkins?
For some reason, I know the name, but I cannot place a face with Bill Jenkins. For some reason, I know the name.
He was a student here in the late 70s, and he was here earlier in the 70s also, but in the late 70s and early 1980s when I knew him. Did a PhD in epidemiology. Okay. He spent 26 years, I think, at the Centers for Disease Control.
Oh, okay.
Before that, he was at the National Center for Health Statistics as their equal opportunity, one of the first, if not the first, equal opportunity employment officer there. He worked to try to get the Tuskegee study to become outed.
He fully aware of the
quite
Tuskegee
succeed,
study.
but
Okay.
he worked on trying to get it outed, and he was instrumental in getting the presidential apology by Bill Clinton.
Oh,
for
wow.
the Tuskegee study.
Maybe that's why I've seen his name in the media then.
It could be, but I don't think he actually got his name connected to it officially because he works more effectively by letting other people get credit.
Okay. Sometimes the best way to do it.
But I had a nice long interview with him.
Okay.
So tell me first, if you would, a little bit about your background. Where are you from originally? And
I was born in Anderson, South Carolina.
mm-hmm.
Went through public school, graduated from West Side High School in Anderson. I did my undergraduate work at Bennett College. My original major was music, because I have a strong musical background. We can talk about it a little bit later. And when I was a rising senior, I got married and I went to Nigeria for 2 years. So I lived for 2 years in Nigeria. I worked in radio there and also did some radio concerts there. I was a trained soprano singer. And so then after 2 years, I came back to Bennett. My husband got a teaching job there, and I switched to elementary education because I realized I could be moving around, and a school district usually only hires one music teacher. But you need lots of elementary school teachers. But it turned out my music was very instrumental even in elementary education. As a matter of fact, it got me the job at Frank Porter Graham when they found out that I was a musician and they wanted a little glee club.
Oh, wow.
They were going to hire a man and they gave the job to me. So I started a glee club at Frank Porter Graham in those days. And so I taught at Frank Porter Graham from September, August of 1963 to June of 1965. So the first year I taught 6th grade, the next year I taught 5th grade. And I started a little glee club, and the school district would have like a Christmas music program where a string quartet would come out to the schools and play, and then the kids were supposed to learn some songs to sing along with them. So the teacher that was sort of teaching them the song, I said, I'll do it. And so I prepared the kids so well that when the kids sang, the music coordinator would know who trained these kids. So music has always been an important part of my life. So, and then after 2 years of teaching, I got my graduate degree. I entered graduate school for a degree in public health, and the thing that motivated me for public health is I began to see that there were things that were interfering with learning. And I laugh now, it was very altruistic in those days, how can they learn, So then I into the School of Public Health. Turns out the superintendent didn't want me to leave. My kids' scores jumped the 2 years that I taught. And he thought I was upset about a little incident that I had back with someone else. And then he told me I could go to any school that I wanted to in Chapel Hill, just name it.
Wow.
So
This was in 60...
my parents would have been very happy to know that. That was 1965 when I tendered my resignation. Thought that I was upset about something
And he
that
offered you
happened
any
early.
school?
He said, go to any school. And I knew that my kids' test scores had been talk of the school district. I had kids that had been passed all the way to the 6th grade who couldn't read and function on a 6th grade level. And I thought, you can't make it in life with this. And I had so many reading groups at first, I could hardly finish reading language arts before lunchtime, and you really need to get in math and science before lunchtime. Those are not good subjects. But finally I was able to consolidate the groups, and I really just built a fire under them that you're not going to just not do anything in my classroom, you're going to do it. And so, as a matter of fact, I met with some of them for the first time in 2008. When I came back, I had a hard time finding someone to call because Farrington, and then there's another name that is very, very common.
Right.
And so it's very hard. And then I remembered I had that one student named, his last name was Jackson, Boyd Jackson. And I went online and found a Boyd Jackson. I didn't know it at the time, and so I got an address, and I sent a letter to that address, and then I explained in case someone else lived there that I was not trying to do a scam on them. And at the last minute, I decided to put my email address in it, and so I kept waiting for a response. Plus, I put a self-addressed envelope in there for them to get back to me, and I didn't hear anything. And I thought, oh well, someone lives there now, and they thought I was a nut. And then one night, I'm on my computer, and I see an email, and I see Jackson. I have a horrible email address. It's 01. You don't know if that's a 0. You don't know what that 1 is, if it's an L or an I. And he was consistent enough to keep trying combinations until he got the right combination.
Wow.
So I would never do that again if I had to get an email address. And so I connected, and then I connected with a female student, and then I asked them, I told them I was coming out for their Black alumni reunion, and I would host a lunch or dinner if they could get some of my former students together.
Wow.
And they were very pleased that I didn't forget them. And first of all, I asked them, I said, I bet you all hate me because I was tough. And he said, no, we talk about you every time we get together. So it shows you that, building a fire on them and not letting them slack off, they appreciate it later on in life.
Now, remind me of a little historical background. That was after Brown versus Board of Ed, but were those schools integrated at the time, or?
No. The next year that I did not teach is when the school district integrated. I told you I'm a musician, and so the superintendent, the teachers would get together, I think, for like 2 days before school started, and it was held at a school, and I was invited to come and sing. I think they asked me to sing God Bless America. And so I opened their little convocation, and I was invited to sit through and then stay for lunch. And so all the teachers met together. I don't know if I'm assuming that was the first time that all the teachers met together as an integrated group. So the first year I didn't teach was the year that the schools integrated here.
How is it that they were still segregated 7 years after Brown versus Board of Ed?
Because sometimes they had to move slowly.
You were in elementary school, so how slowly could you, I thought
the mindset was something. I don't know if you remember some of the demonstrations that...
in Chapel Hill?
No, throughout the country.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't that easy in Charlotte either.
No, right.
So
But Chapel Hill,
I,
this liberal enclave.
as a matter of fact, in some parts it was not that liberal because Frank Porter Graham was supposed to have been an integrated school from its inception. I think I taught the 3rd year. I understand some of the real estate people got in and threw a monkey wrench in that.
Really?
And so now there was one white teacher, Mrs. Her husband was on the faculty here, and I'm blocking on her name. Oakham. I think her name was Oakham. Dan Oakham's wife.
Oh, Dan Oaken. Oaken. O-K-U-N.
His wife taught. She was a special ed teacher at Frank Porter Graham. So she was the first white teacher. It seemed to me there was another teacher that came the next year, but that was like, I went there, I think it was his 3rd year in operation. But yeah, the real estate people threw a monkey wrench in and got people excited. Your property values would go down and whatnot. So it did not integrate, and that's, my understanding was that's one of the reasons that they chose the name Frank Porter Graham, because of what he had stood for on an international level, and that school was supposed to have been integrated from the very beginning, but it did not
wasn't.
happen.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So not everybody was forward-thinking
Well,
in
that
Chapel Hill.
we knew.
Yeah. So it got delayed, about 5 years or so, because it integrated in August or September 1965.
And were the rest of the schools integrated at the same time, or that was just Frank Porter Graham Elementary?
No, the school district
The
integrated.
whole district did?
Yeah. That's why the superintendent could say I could go to any school I wanted, because the whole district was integrating
Right.
for that school session in 1965.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a lot of history. And and it was interesting too, because some of the counselors, because the kids, I guess, were talked to by the counselors before they entered school, and they had given them a questionnaire, and one of the questions was who had been the most influential person in your life, and they wanted me to know that most of the kids mentioned me as the most influential person in their life up until that time. But I thought they would have hated my guts, because I was pretty tough. But I just realized they could not function in life without a good education, and also that speech was very important, because a lot of them would say, well, if they spoke proper English, they would get teased. And and my feeling is that people, your first impression is your speech. And people, this is also something that I also learned in the thing from Dr. Lucy Morgan, one of the teachers, is that your second encounter is based on your first encounter. So that impression that you make at the first one is going to influence what that second encounter is going to be like. And so I felt that to make a good impression, language is that first thing that people know about you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sort of drilled that in, that you have to speak proper English. But I said, now, don't go home and correct your parents, because you might get slapped up against the wall. And of course, they would laugh at that. But don't let other people make you not use proper English.
If you have time in your schedule, I would try to call the Southern Oral History program and ask them to have a real oral history interviewer interview you and your former students, because I think that would be really valuable. Really valuable. Maybe the next Black Alumni Reunion, we can arrange that in advance.
So I don't know how many of them went on to college, but quite a few of them went on to college. I don't know whether or not I was responsible for some of them becoming teachers, but some of my students became teachers. And it's hard to believe that I taught them, let me see, 50 years ago. That is so hard to believe that it's been that long.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You were 15 when you did it, right?
Yes, seems that way, yeah. I was a little neophyte teacher, a little new teacher, but I took it very seriously, very seriously.
You must have been had a natural talent for it as well. I mean,
Well, I had good teachers, fortunately, and as a matter of fact, my high school, Westside High School, is one of 9 high schools in South Carolina that kept its name when the schools integrated because it had a good academic track record.
mm-hmm.
A lot of the black school names disappeared when schools integrated. So Westside still, although it was rebuilt as the largest school, and the name has been retained. The Negro principal that we had, and I like the word Negro because it also means black, but it also tells me something cultural. If you tell me black, I don't know if you're from the West Indies, I don't know if you're from Africa,
Mm-hmm.
or from the United States. Now, my husband was a Nigerian.
Mm-hmm. From where in Nigeria?
He was born in Ibadan. He's Yoruba.
Uh-huh.
I'm divorced now, but he was Yoruba.
Mm-hmm.
My son, Oluwale, was born in Lagos, Nigeria, which was the capital in those days. It's no longer the capital. That was out on the Atlantic Ocean. The capital now has moved inland. And I was there when the British gave over independence in 1960. I don't know if it was like the end of September or October 1st of 1960. I was there, and I was hoping my son was going to be the first baby born. I was in the maternity ward, but he didn't make it. He was 2 days.
So was he a British subject?
Well, I valued my American citizenship, so as soon as I could get down to the American consulate, I had to surrender his Nigerian birth certificate to get an American birth certificate. Mm-hmm. So my son had American citizenship mm-hmm. from almost birth. So when I get his birth certificates, they come from the State Department. And I have one with Colin Powell's signature on it. And I'm so disgusted with myself that I didn't get another one while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State to have had her name with one of his birth certificates.
I never thought of collecting birth certificates as a way.
Yeah, because that would have been wonderful to have birth certificates with those 2 names on it as heads of the State Department.
Yes, indeed.
So I lived there for 2 years, and anyway, I was saying why I like the term Negro because mm-hmm. it distinguishes there.
So how do you understand the term Negro, just so I'm understanding completely? Is that a synonym for African American, or not really?
Yeah, because we have a lot of mixture,
mm-hmm.
Whereas you don't find that in traditional African. You know, my great maternal great-grandfather was Native American.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that. There's also mulatto somewhere in our background. So it's quite a mixture for a lot of Negroes. We have a lot of mixture, you know, European as well as Native American,
mm-hmm.
as well as African blood.
Mm-hmm.
So,
of course, some of that is true for white Europeans also. I mean, for
yeah.
American whites who are classified as whites, but they actually may have ancestors
and
who were...
there's some very interesting distinguished people that, although they were mixed, look at Eisenhower's background and see what his parents were. It looks like if you had money,
mm-hmm.
then you got classed as white. But if you see the picture, especially of his mother, you see the Negro features in her face.
I have not seen his parents.
And she's considered a mulatto.
Mm-hmm.
And so was his father. You can really see it. And Eisenhower looks so much like his mother. And there are 5 other presidents that were supposed to have black blood, and I understand. I read about some, it's been a long time, that some never denied it, they just never answered to it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of mixture going on
mm-hmm.
in American culture.
Well, historically, we know about it, we just
Yeah.
ignore it when it's convenient.
Yeah.
But I'd like to come back to Bennett College, if you would, because,
Mhm.
as you said, Ethel Jean Jackson was a classmate of yours. Can you tell me something about your time at Bennett and her time at Bennett, what you want to tell about her?
I don't remember now. I know she majored in education. I don't know if she was on the elementary level or on the high school level. I don't know if she had a subject major, but I switched from music to elementary education. I was a member of the Bennett College choir. In those days, the freshman choir was separate, and so I entered the music world. I was a soloist in the freshman choir, and then graduated to the senior choir, and I spent the rest of my time singing in the senior choir, and I took private voice lessons. Mary Jane Crawford was my voice teacher, and then later, when I married and came back, I think the voice teacher I had was named Mr. Carter, I think was his name. I've forgotten his name. It's been so long. And music has, I said, has been very, very important. I did solo work here at the university, which, so I think I was probably the first, I'm almost sure I was the first black music student and soloist at the University of North Carolina, although someone else is credited. I was a soloist in from 1963 to 66. Also, while I was here, there was a World's Fair in New York in 1964.
Mm-hmm.
I had been soloist with the Varsity Men's Glee Club under Dr. Joel Carter for their spring concert. And then the young men wanted me to go to New York and sing some of the same solos we did. I think some George Gershwin work I think we did. And so they got permission from the governor's office that I would travel. They allowed my husband to travel with me. They had to get me back to close school. So on June 2nd, 1964, I sang at the New York's World's Fair with the Varsity Men's Glee Club.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And they had to get me back on the bus to close school the next day. So I rode all night on a Trailway, a Greyhound bus, and then they had someone from the governor's office meet me and drive me straight to Frank Porter Graham School to close out. And that's how tight it was.
Wow.
And then we later got, and we also did a formal photograph outside of the World's Fair. We all got a copy of that and a citation from Governor Sanford for participating on
Wow.
North Carolina Day.
Wow.
And then I also did solo work. I did one of the commencement concerts. I think they would have been at Hill Hall, because I studied voice first with Wayne Czar, and he thought I was too advanced for him, so he wanted me to study with Dr. Wilton Mason. I don't know if you remember that name. I think he's now deceased. He might have been head of the music department at that time. So I spent the rest of my time studying voice with Dr. Wilton Mason. And so I did a Christmas community concert one year. I think the group was probably it was a group made up from the surrounding area, and we did it with an orchestra. And then I did a commencement concert. I was a soloist in an oratorio that we did. I can't remember now. And they can't seem to find any of those old programs back in 1967.
Really?
Because I'm trying to, because someone else has been credited for being the first black soloist. I was the first black soloist, and so they can't find any of those programs. But I did solo work with Chapel of the Cross, and Dr. Michael McVeigh, he's still living in, so he's going to try to find some of those programs at Chapel of the Cross that I participated in. The organist and the choir director was a PhD music student, Gerald Bobb, so he knew me from the School of Music, and then I did some of the musical vespers with them. I don't remember how many of those I did. In those days, you just did them and you didn't take count.
Now, this is all the time you were a teacher.
A teacher as well as a student. I still did my music.
So you were a teacher at Frank Porter Graham Elementary. Were you enrolled at UNC?
I just did voice lessons at UNC.
But
and I took them not for credit, because I was tired of having to. At Bennett, I used to we have to, sing a song and go through this thing while you had these 4 people out there grading you. I didn't want that stress. I just wanted to study voice and enjoy it. So I took it for none credit, but for the development of the technique.
But they had you sing with the varsity men's choir.
Yeah, I did a lot of solo work, yeah.
I mean, with UNC, I mean, as if you were a UNC student, right?
Well, a lot of times choirs have like outside guest soloists come in.
I see.
So,
Okay, all right.
yeah. And again, I participated in one of the commencement concerts that was, I think, again, at Hill Hall. I don't remember the oratorio that we did. So I was really the first black soloist at University of North Carolina.
Uh-huh. Well, it should be possible. I just want to check the camera while
Okay,
because
sure.
Vanessa's not here. But it might be possible to find some of those things. I'm surprised if they don't have any historical records of them.
They're now trying to build some archives. I did send a copy of the picture to someone in one of the libraries to document that I had been a soloist in the 1960s, because someone else has been credited with that. But I was the first black soloist at the University of North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And the surrounding areas, sort of like your name sort of travels around. And I still continued my music after I went to California for 11 years, for 11 seasons. I opened some of the games with the San Francisco Giants.
Really?
I did the national anthem, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
For 11 that's very, very nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And I did national anthem for 2 seasons for the Golden State Warriors basketball team. And for some, there was a professional volleyball team at one time. I did some of their national anthems down in San Jose. So I did my last national anthem, I think it was the year that the Pope came to Candlestick. Can't remember what year. I said I did for 11 seasons that I did the national anthem.
And you must have recordings of your singing.
I have some tapes, yeah. But after a while, you don't really think about that. It was something I wanted to do. I just felt very patriotic. I wrote them a letter and saying I'd like to do this. More and more people got interested in from the local level. Yeah, I did it for 11 seasons for the Giants.
I think it'd be nice if we could get a copy of just one of your performances.
Okay, I was looking at some of those tapes the other day. I haven't touched those tapes in years.
Yeah, they may not work anymore. Tapes don't last forever.
Oh, they don't?
But no, tapes don't. Even DVDs don't, actually. I found that to my shock.
Somehow I like videotapes better than I like DVDs.
Well, tape is somewhat less stable than DVD, and even DVD is not.
I find that they spoil so easily.
DVDs,
so, yeah.
They can, and I've had some that spoiled very quickly.
Yeah.
But it's probably still good. And the Health Sciences Library is creating a collection on the history of African American, of the Minority Student Caucus. But even though you predate the caucus, I think that's still would be considered part of it, and that it's possible that they would be willing to keep that on file along with the other things.
So I've had a very interesting life. Very interesting life. So
You're having a very interesting life.
Yeah, music has been in the background. I've retired professionally for 30 years. I was a professional church musician out in California. I worked as a paid church musician.
Really?
I started in the Protestant churches, and then for Unity, and then the Catholic Church started paying musicians, and then I ended up working just for Catholic churches.
Uh-huh.
And I think I was probably the first female cantor. I was known as a cantor in the Catholic churches because you do some of the service in song, in chant, on regular song. And I was asked to do an ordination of the first permanent deacons at the St. Mary's Cathedral under Archbishop Quinn. And so this nun had heard me in my parish in Palo Alto and brought me in as the musician for their training. And then when they did the ordination, she asked me to do it. And then she said, the organist said, well, who's going to do the music? And she gave my name, which is female name. And he said, oh, well, tell her to wear pants. And so Sister Joan Derry said, oh, no, I'm going to have her wear the most feminine dress she has. So I'm assuming I was the first female to cantor at the St. Mary's Cathedral. So you can see music has been a big part of my life and has gotten me into some very interesting situations. And so to do a service with bishops and archbishops is quite something, quite nerve-wracking too. And to do it at a big cathedral, that's even more nerve-wracking.
Yeah, well, you've got some very high-profile performances there.
Yeah, yeah. Now that I'm looking back, I see it as that. When I was doing it at the time, it's just something I wanted to do. I didn't really think about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have a few things that have been occurring to me as we've been talking, as you've been talking. One is, when you were at Bennett, that was 1960.
I first went to Bennett in 1956. From 56 to 59, then I got married, went away for 2 years. Then I came back in August of 1961. I changed my major in my senior year. I was a senior when I came back because I switched from music to elementary ed, so I had to do 2 years as a senior since I changed my major in my senior year because they had changed some of the core courses that you had to have plus some of the basic courses for elementary education. But it was worth it. And as I said, Dr. Willa Player was the president at the time, Willoughby Player. And she was on a mission for, I think it was United Nations. They were studying higher education in Africa. And Nigeria was one of their stops. And she knew that I was there ahead of time and had informed me she was coming. And so she said, when are you coming back to finish your degree? And I said, well, as soon as my husband can get a job there. And she had wanted an African professor, because at that time, then schools started wanting African professors.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said, well, if your husband is interested, because I told her, I think his degree, I think was like political science at that time, or sociology and political science. And she was going to hire someone else from that she had met in another country. And so my husband got the job, and so we came back to Bennett, and I finished my degree. And at first I was not taking voice lessons, and she got a little concerned and summoned me to her office and said, well, why aren't you taking voice lessons? She was very soft-spoken. And I said, well, you know, it's additional money. So she said, well, you know, I think we have some scholarship money that we can pay for voice lessons for you. And so I got a scholarship to continue my private voice lessons, entered the choir. And as I said, you see, music has been a big part of my background. And so that was that. And I did my practice teaching in Greensboro. I can't remember the school now. And I wasn't sure what grade level I wanted. I think I might have picked 4th grade to do my practice teaching. And I just realized I was not suited for the very young ones. I like science very much. And so the older they are, the more you can get into this. So then I got a teaching level certificate for grammar grades rather than primary grade certificate.
So I was thinking, you describe yourself as a music teacher, but it sounds like you've been teaching a lot more than music.
Yeah, I was a regular elementary school teacher,
yeah.
But music got me the job.
It got you the job, but you apparently were comfortable with math and science. And
yeah, I like science and math. Yeah, yeah. So I did all of.
And
I was in those days. I don't know if they do it now, but in those days you taught all the subjects by yourself. You had no aides. You did it all. And so I taught 6th grade the first year and 5th grade the second year. And the reason we all shifted ground, originally Frank Porter Graham had the 7th grade, and then they moved the 7th grade over to the high school. I can't remember the name of the high school, and all of the teachers shifted down 1 grade. So the 7th grade teachers shifted to 6th. I was 6, I shifted to 5th grade, so everybody shifted down a grade. But yeah, and I like science, and I even did we had some science equipment. I did some science experiments. So I did a little bit of everything. I don't know if a teacher has to teach everything now with the new system.
I don't know. I'm so far away from the schools.
It was self-contained. Yeah, you did everything.
I believe it.
And there were some kids that would come to school with no lunch. You know, I bought lunches. I didn't realize this. I had forgotten. One of my former students reminded me that I bought lunch for her at times. I did not remember that at all. I remember sometimes buying milk, but I didn't realize that I had bought lunch for kids. Some of them were ashamed. Their parents would not have loaf bread, we used to call it loaf bread, and would give them a sandwich on a biscuit, and they were ashamed to bring the biscuit in, and they would leave it on the bus. And so you couldn't have a kid all day at school with no food. And finally, I found out that they were leaving their food on the bus because they were embarrassed to bring it in. And I had a really good lecture. I used to have, we got to talk sessions. And I'd deal with things like...
You mean with your whole class?
With my whole class. When I just found that there was a serious problem that was going on, it would be let's talk time. And then I would explain, and I got rid of some of that shame that your parent is doing this is the best they can do, they love you, and don't be ashamed of this. It was something else that I did. Oh, I found sometimes kids, stuff would fall on the floor, another kid would step over and wouldn't pick it up. It was less talk time. You know, if someone's article falls on the floor, you be kind and you pick it up. Mm-hmm. And you give it back to the person. You don't step over it. You just sort of like basic manners, mm-hmm. That would, stand you in good stead in the world. Mm-hmm. And so I just did a lot of practical stuff like that. And I guess that's why in some ways that I didn't realize at the time that they valued what I had done for them. Because as I said, I thought they would hate my guts because I was tough. And then when I got a hold of Boyd, and said, "You all remember me?" And he said, "We talk about you every time we get together, that you meant so much to us." And some of the kids were advanced, okay, not all of them. I had one little boy, his name was Kenneth. He loved to read. Someone in his family had taught him the love of reading. He would finish his seat assignments, and he would have a book, and he'd start reading, and he'd get so much into that book, his leg would be going, he would be enjoying that book so much. When they did those national tests, you couldn't score that kid. He went off the graph.
Wow.
But someone had gotten him into reading, mm-hmm. and we had some kids that had not been read to, and this is one thing that I push. I do court volunteer work now. I'm a court-appointed special advocate. I push reading and the language arts. I know from my research, I'm going to go a little bit into public health now. Mm-hmm. The last assignment I had in public health, I worked for almost 4 years in a drug treatment program for women. Wow. I had a choice to do a desk job or to do drug treatment. I did not want to be stuck in a desk job. I'd much rather be working with someone. And I had no idea. And my first assignment in public health in 1972 had been the Alcohol Bureau. The old Alcohol Bureau, drugs and alcohol was separate in those days. And so it's sort of like I went full circle. And so they wanted me to teach a health class, and they wanted me to do 2 types of parenting classes. One was a general parenting class, and the other was a special parenting class that they would sign up for I think it was 6 weeks. And their counselors, their drug counselors would recommend women. It was originally for women that had children under 1 year of age, but they found out some of these women had no idea as to how to care or raise children. As a matter of fact, when I was oriented to the job, the program manager told me I would have to teach some of them even how to hold a baby. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And so, but some of them, their parents had them when they were 14, 15, 16. Their parents were sometimes into drugs, so they had never been properly parented and whatnot. So I taught health classes, and what I did, something that I learned that my first class that I did, I then had them fill out a questionnaire as to what would you like to learn about, because I wanted to teach them something that they were interested in. Mm-hmm. I only had to do that one time, and once I got going, it was like just easy flow. But I had to teach them, and in the special class, I got more into this they brought their babies to class. Our drug treatment program had its own daycare center, and they were to bring their babies in, and that class could only be up to 10 to 12 maximum. Most time the counselors knew that some would drop, so I'd end up with probably about 8 to 10, and I'd have more clothes. I had a doll. I modeled behavior for them. One of the things that I did that I found out, I could not believe that a lot of them could not talk positively to their babies. I had to actually model that. I found that it was not an unusual situation, because some company had put out a list of 25 positive things to say to your baby. Most of the women would only respond to a baby in a negative situation. So what you're doing, you're encouraging children to do negative things as they get older, and you don't want that. So one of the sessions would be like on communication. Some would be on like how you take care of yourself as a parent. I can't remember the sessions now. But one of the things that shocked me, I would do the thing on communication, and then I would say, okay, for the next week, then they only met once a week. For the next week, I want you to, for 5 times a day, for 5 minutes, I want you to look at your baby, smile, and only say positive things. And then for the next session, I also would teach them, I taught them 4 songs for 4 weeks, and then another 4 songs. These would be like nursery rhyme songs that the women were not used to doing, to sing, look at their babies, and smile. And so I would start each session with these 4 songs, and then for that particular session, I would then have them, I had a stopwatch. They were to look at their babies and only say positive things for 5 minutes. Do you know I'd probably only have 1 woman that could do that? They could not look and smile at their babies and say positive things. They were so used to negatives and only responding in negative things, and which I see is a real problem. Because I audited a course at Stanford. My husband was at Stanford, so I found out wives could audit free. And I went to a communication class, and then I found out if you only respond to negative, you increase the negative behavior of your children. So that was one of the things that I tried to teach, is you only try to respond to positive things if possible, ignore the negative if you can. And I had one woman, and it was really supposed to be for the smaller kids. She had an older child, and so after I taught that, she came in the next week, and she said her son, she used it also on the older boy, and she said, Mom, you didn't see me, I just did something good. So he had picked up on the correlation that she was began to respond to him when he did something positive rather than negative. It was a learning experience for me. I found out most of them were single moms, no male influence, and I also talked about you need a safe male in your children. And I would stress safe because I knew about what was going on. And so there was a guy in the health department, Jackson was his name. He was in the Black Infant Health Program, and he worked with the role of men, teaching men how to be fathers. And he would go into the jail and other groups to talk to men because they did not know how to be a father, a hands-on father. And I would have him come every 6 months and talk to my women. And I would have some women almost in every group say, oh, my kids don't need a father. And I said, yes, they do. And I said, it can be a grandfather, an uncle, or someone else, but they have to be safe. Your children need both male and female experiences in their life. And so that was a very learning experience for me, as well as being able to do something for the women. I mean, you just have no idea that parenting skills are, it's nice, because the first time I heard about parenting classes, I laughed because I thought everybody knew about how to parent. Mine was in for a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I could give personal testimony about not everybody knowing how to parent.